Oh, hello again. This is Philip at thebest3d.com. And in this quick tutorial, I wanted to explore some of the techniques that are available for working with different layers or compositions. The thing is, layers are not quite as sophisticated as in some other programs. We don't do 32-bit per layer. We don't do RGB and alpha. We just do RGB, red, green, blue. So there is no extra byte that tells a pixel whether it's visible or not in this layer, or whether it should show the pixel from the layer underneath it. Nonetheless, you can do things like this here. You see here a composition of two animations. Underneath, we have the some sort of a fractal Mandelbrot that we shifted around, and it's stored here, and that's a concept that will be very useful in your workflow. So I want to show that. And there's another animation here which is intentionally drawn against a pink background, because what we want to do is combine it against this one in such a way that whatever is pink will become transparent. Right, because we don't have the alpha channel inside these frames to label which pixel is transparent and which one is opaque. We have to pick a color that is going to play that role of kind of the designated driver, if you want, right? The equivalent of the one who doesn't have fun, doesn't show his color, actually turns transparent. And what we'll do is we will combine these two. There's a couple of different ways to understand and see the effects. One place where you can see combining two things is right here with this big icons. There's three icons in the upper right corner under the previews, and the one on the right side shows the current image in the main image. And if you click this, it will blend it with the one that's in the swap image, the swap buffer. So this is almost a bit like a system of layers as well. And I wanted to show it there, and then I'm going to show it also not in an animated way under the regular layers here. So let's start from scratch and imagine we have just no animation. Let's go 3D animation here and get rid of that, and let's go create let's go with the default scenario where we have a background that's white, and then we'll go and create a new image, which is, let's make it small just for sake of fitting it on the screen. Let's do 800 by 600 there. Good old Super VGA. All right, now it erased it to pink because that's still my erase color here, so I really want to erase it to white. And in here is where we'll have our background image. So let's put in fact that Mandelbrot to work here on the render. This could be an image you already have that you import through the clipboard, through the file open, many different ways to get it in there, right? Or something you render, maybe start with a plasma noise and go to a 3D designer to build some 3D landscapes. Whatever the technique is, I'm going to show something that's colorful here, and to just use the render menu here on the filters and go to Mandelbrot, and then I'll zoom in a little bit to a smaller area. This is very sensitive here. Let's go something like this. So you see something like that, right? Let's go around here, and and then just call this one. Let's store this image. We might need this image again, so let's go store a copy of it. Store image, or store image copy. The name that you see in these menus, by the way, may change relative to what you have. I'm not using 9.6 anymore here. I'm using 9.6 plus. It's kind of it's gotten a slight update to improve the OBJ export, and there's also some menu changes. You see view here instead of window. But functionality wise it's very similar. So one thing we'll do is we'll have this one as our background image, and you'll see it here, by the way. You can change the size of the layers. If you minimize this, you don't see it. If you open this, you'll see I think here layer options. There's just different sizes for these thumbnails. And so there is just one layer here right now, and I'm going to open another one. Now before I do that, let's have it so that the background color is actually white. Just because that's probably what you see by default. So we have click this pink one here and make it white. Click the primary color and make it anything different, like say blue, for instance. Right. Okay. So I'm going to go and create a new layer, add a layer, and that one gets erased to the background color, the secondary color we call it, really. Right. The secondary color is white in this case. And there is still the other one here, and that one's the swap image. You can actually switch back and forth here, jump to the swap image. You can also do that here from the image area, jump to the swap image. And now, right now, it's in this layer. So if we hide the base layer, then you see it's getting this tint. But of course, it's also showing you the transparency pattern, indicating that it is being combined with the next layer below, which is absent. So that's obviously what's happening here. If we turn this layer, the top layer off or on, then you see how it's affecting the layer underneath. It is not hiding it. It is not replacing it. It is a default mode, which is the same as multiply mode. Right. So that's the thing, because we don't have an alpha channel inside the layer to indicate whether a pixel is visible or not. So that means if we go and select something like circles to fill in here, let's see, yellow circles, not much is going to happen except for some of these. Some of the colors that are being multiplied will look different. Some of them will look just about the same. What certainly always works is black, because you multiply black with something else, it looks like it's black. It's opaque. Well, no, not really opaque. It's multiplying it and then turns black that way. But if you shift this around, that layer here, if you go to the transform, there we go, transform, maybe even the shift, you can shift this around. You can see that layer can be transformed, and it has some effect on the pixels based on the colors that are in there. All right, so how do we really want to use this? The technique really is one where we're going to erase the entire layer to pink. And so what we need to do is make sure that that erase color is pink. And there's a couple of different places where you can see a plain pink color. There's probably some good enough approximation of pink you can grab here, and you can find them in a couple of other color mixers. And once you have that pink color, maybe in the primary, you can right click here and clear it to the primary. Right now, still not opaque, still not hiding it. Well, the technique now is that you need to set the layer mode to magic pink. Right, so magic pink will make all of these pixels transparent, and anything other than pink will turn opaque. So now you can go and select blue, for instance, here, and let's say you go to any of these tools like the rectangle fill, and you fill blue. Now that one has a little bit of pink in there, so it's a little bit transparent still. That is some of the challenges with using a magic pink mode. There's a good one. There's a pretty opaque one. Let's go yellow. Let's go, well, if you go pink, then it goes transparent again, right? So you got to be careful not to use that color. But white you can definitely use. And I want to make sure it's really plain white. Or even gray or black or something like that. Those will also be showing opaque, as long as there is no pink component in it here. So something like this here should be pretty opaque. So that's the technique. That's the trick with Magic Pink, is you set the layer mode to a sort of a blending mode that's called Magic Pink, and then it expects you to erase to pink if you want it transparent, and erase or draw to any other color, fill with any other color, do anything else that will turn it opaque to that color. One example is something like circular gradients, right? If you do circular gradients, you can see there are some colors in there that are pink and are starting to show transparent. That's if your gradient actually has that color. So if you go to let's see, gradients and the sweep editor, you can see I have some colors here that are close to pink, reddish blue combination and that sort of things. But if you get rid of the red, there's very little of that, and it's for the most part pretty much opaque. There's a little bit here in this blue area still, but if you go down to just 0 red, it should be all opaque. If you have, let's see, some colors like these, you know, all of these remain opaque. And then you can have the opacity in the gradient as another guide to set it to transparent here, opaque up here, and then transparent again at the bottom. Smooth it down a little bit, and all of this, it looks like I'm not totally transparent at the end here. There you go. So lots of different ways to make this work. Just erase to pink, and it will be a transparent layer. Let's go right click here, right click, so the secondary color is pink. Let's go erase to pink, erase to secondary. There you go. We see the layer underneath it, right? There it is. We are still on the one here that's erased to pink, and we can now do all sorts of different colors except for pink. You don't want to use pink now when you use this technique to mask it. Now, the next thing you want to do is perhaps blend it all together into a single image, right? Flatten it, as we call it. This one here, and before I do that, let me just store this image so you can easily recreate this scenario. Store image. I'm going to go here. You can see it still has the pink color, and it has all the doilies here. And so now what I'm going to do is, first of all, flatten this. I think this one is broken. If I do a merge with next layer, results may vary, and that means it may vary depending on the blending mode, the layer blend mode. Oops, where's my layers? I switched the layers off. Oh, down here. So you may not necessarily want to do that from the current layer to the next. However, blending all or flattening all of that, you know, merge all layers, what you see is what you get. In theory, that should give you the same image still, and there it is. All right, so now we have just one image with the result. Now, the other things you'd like to do typically when you do these opaque items in one layer and then another another layer with more objects, something you'd like to do typically is perhaps reposition it. Right? This thing, these doilies, might actually represent something else. Maybe a house, maybe a I don't know, a squirrel, an animal, or something, a helicopter, something in your game. And so let's say we have a background scene here. And then on top of that, you want to add a layer. First thing you'll want to do is set the mode away from default and make it a magic pink. And because it's erased to pink, you'll see the colors from the layers underneath it, right? And you then bring this one in that you have stored, or you recreate it again for the first time. Let's say, for instance, I do that. I say, let's go and put this thing here, put this thing here. There, so. You can also create more holes, cut out. Essentially, whatever is pink will be transparent, right? So if you go to fill like this and right button fill, that will cut it out with the secondary color. Primary color is white right now. You see that here. You see that over here. Primary color white, or whatever color, as long as it's not pink or close to pink, because there's a little bit of a margin around that. As long as it doesn't have any pinkish component, it should be fully opaque. But you can make a transparent version here with using the secondary color, which is pink, and so that cuts out, seems to cut out a hole. And so if you store this particular image, you can see what it looks like. It now has still the pink background, and if we use this image in Magic Pink mode, it will use the pink as transparency flag or indicator, a hint. All right, so now we may want to do something like that and then shift it around, transform it, all sorts of things, right? You might, let's go and close this. You might want to, for instance, apply the filter for, where do we have the transform, I don't know, sinoid, spheroids, there's all sorts of a warp. Where's my, or twirl? There's this twirl. So the twirl filter, all sorts of funky effects that you can play with and apply that, and now perhaps even do some more reposition things, transform shift to move it around. This one wraps around, so if it's too big it starts showing on the other side again. But anyway, you have this in the second layer, and you can flatten it simply by going to flatten the image, right? Whereas if you do this one here, merge with next layer, it does have potential for not giving you the final result image being the same, because it does its thing with the next layer's mode. And I think it uses the mode from this layer. So I don't know. Let's go do this. Let's go choose this one. This one here is flat pin light mode. Wait, what did I just do? Pin light is not what I want. Magic pink is what I had here. But let's say I go choose this one and make this one magic pink as well. And if I select this one and bring it down to the next, yeah, that still kind of loses it. So that's not the way to go. If you want to flatten it, flatten the whole thing, right? Go put this in, make sure the mode here is magic pink. Now you have the image you want to see on top of the other image, and now you can you can flatten this image. All right, so that will work, and it doesn't matter what layer mode this one down below had, because that one's not used. It's using the one from the current layer down to the next as it's flattening it, something like that. The thing you want to do though sometimes is to do that across a whole animation, a whole image sequence. Right? So I want to show you again this technique here with combining two image sequences, because these layers, that's fine. You have a stack of images that you can have on different layers, but they are not animated. What you can do though is have this thing here. Let's say for instance this image or this sequence all animated. This one is one that I created earlier. Let me just show you how to do that. So I'm going to go and create a new image, and maybe again I'll make it a little bit smaller. So let's go and clear the alpha channel here. What I'll do is make this a little bit smaller. So let's go new. It's 800 by 600, and at that point I'll just put this thing in. It's and maybe I want it to fit in exactly, so I'm going to go click on this little icon here, this little pull down arrow, and then choose replace existing image, creates a new image, so that way the whole image is in there. All right, and if you see the marching ants around it, it's just showing you where the end of it is. You can clear that. We have the whole thing selected. All right, so I want this as an animation. Let's go create an animation from this current image. Right, copy the current image. Let's do it simple, just 30 frames. No need to be picky here, just to learn the concept. Let's go and add a little animation to that. I'm going to use the timeline for that. And in the timeline, I have certainly some filters similar to the filter menu here, but they are keyframeable. I'm going to go 3 times down on that scroll bar until I reach the transform section. And there is a shift option and the transform option. I'm going to use the transform and clear first set the first keyframe, then go to the end and zoom in a little bit, and also transform like the position. Could also add a little bit of a rotational component to that, whatever you want to do here. Let's do something like that. Keyframe that one. So we now have 2 keyframes. You can, by the way, reposition those if you want to move them in time against the others, and then apply that. So now we have basically a little transform. Let's go, this is an important part of the workflow. We showed you earlier the image and store the image, right? You don't want to do that for every single image. I mean, you could, but it's going to be time consuming if you do this, right? Frame by frame, store image copy, and you have one image, you have another. Instead, what you can do is store the entire animation. So go to animation and store animation. I would do that to disk, especially if you have an SSD, super fast solid state disk, or if it's a relatively small image sequence, small dimensions, it will store it to disk pretty quickly, and then that way it won't waste your memory for the stored copy. Okay, so we have this is one little animation, and it is here as a DWA, dog waffle animation, right? You can scrub through that, and we can do the same thing with a different animation, something like this one here. Let's put that image here, and let's put it to good use. I'm going to go close the others. This one we probably don't need. This one would be actually interesting to use. Let's use this one. Oh, these are different dimensions. This one will, when we click it here, will restore the whole animation. I guess it is bigger. Let's see, under image, info, 1280 by 720. Okay, let's work with that. So I'm going to go and squeeze this one in here. into the current image, and that will be basically by paste it centered, not exactly, we need to actually scale it as well. And you could simply erase and then start doing that thing again with those doilies, and paint in whatever you want. You can use the brush tool, maybe in airbrush mode, and pick a color like blue and all that sort of thing. All that jazz is essentially going to keep some pink and then some other colors in there, right? Some whites and so on. All right, so this image is the one we want to have composited with transparency wherever it's pink, and opaque with anything else. And we want to composite that eventually as an animation. Right now it's a single image, so I'm going to turn this into an animation too. I'm going to create an animation of 30 with the current copy of the current image. And there it is. We have the image sequence of a bunch of identical images. And this one I'm also going to do some transform, some animation, just to see that it's moving. First of all, I'm going to store it. We might want actually several editions of this. So let's go to disk and store this one. And I'm going to go close, or at least minimize these guys, get them out of the way. There, get out of here. Okay, so we have one animation here and we have another one here, and this animation is not quite done yet. This actually we need to store, we need to transform it some more. So I'm going to go again to the timeline here, where I can do some keyframe transforms, and I don't know, maybe we could do a twirl again, and this time actually keyframe it, right? So we can do something like goes like this and back. So initially we have it like this. On the first keyframe, on the very end we want it the same. Let's keyframe that again, and then in between here, maybe we want to have it just twirl the other way. Right, keyframe that. Maybe we want to hold it a little bit at that. So let's grab this little handle here for the timeline, and then go over here and hold it again here at the same value, and then that way we actually hold it at this before it goes back. All right. So let's go apply that. And you can see when we have this animation, we now have a little back and forth as it's cycling through that. And let's go store that. So we now have two animations, almost there. All right, so we have one animation that's this background animation. We have this animation that's going to be one we kind of want to have sitting on top, but wherever it is, oops, not this big, wherever it is pink, it really should be transparent to let this guy see through, show. So there's a couple of ways to do that. Let me go minimize, or at least make it smaller here. Okay, so one thing you can do is you can make one of these animations the source for the swap image. Right. So remember, the swap image is in the other side, so almost like the flip side of the page. So you could say, okay, let's load this image simply by clicking it. Right. That one was already there, but I just wanted to show you how to do that. So here it is. This is the one animation. Then I'm going to choose the other one and say use as animated swap. I'm not going to click here because that would load it. Right. If I click here, that makes that your current animation. Can have just one loaded current animation. So I'm going to go load this one, and then I'm going to go make sure that this one here is selected as the current animated swap. Right, so as I'm scrubbing through that, it pulls the image from here and puts that into the swap. If you switch over, you can see it right there. Right, now you can actually see them both at the same time by combining, right, by doing a layer mixing. Click on that, and now you see them both. And as you scrub, you can see how it's animating one which is in the foreground, or which is the currently loaded animation here, and then there is the other one in the swap on the backside with the Mandelbrot fractals. Both of these animations are doing their own thing, but they're being blended together in a particular way. When you right click on this, you have choices here as to how you want to blend them. But the default mode is the same as the multiply mode, right? Because again, there is no alpha channel that says you're opaque or you're transparent. But you have also here that magic pink again. So with magic pink, you can actually see that this image that's in the foreground is opaque only wherever the color does not have the pink component, the pink gene, so to speak. And the moment there is some pink gene in the pixels, it becomes transparent. And as you scrub through that now, you can see the animation on top. and this one here down below. So that's another way to kind of see those two things together, layered, and it's almost, I mean, it is kind of, for all intents and purposes, it behaves in a way similar to layers. You have two animations that go in parallel. One is the main currently loaded animation. The other one is in the swap image, simply by storing it and designating it as you go into the swap image. Once we have that, we want to, of course, combine these together into one, like flatten it, right, frame for frame. Not just a single stack of two layers to flatten, but actually across the entire timeline. Well, simply right-click here and say Merge with Swap. And what that will do is we'll merge this entire trick sequence here as a single animation sequence. So now you have the background animation and the foreground animation. And you go and store that. Let's see, save it as an AVI. Store it because you may want to do other things with it. But let's do other things. Let's add some snowfall to that. Right, let's say we want to have a snowstorm on top of this. Let's say this is not really a little Mandelbrot and some twirly doily series. Maybe this represents a background scene like mountains and then a castle or some invasion of whatever on top of it, helicopters or fighter planes from another planet. And now on top of that we have bad weather conditions and it's raining like the end of the world. So we have to do something about adding some rain to that, right? And again, the rain will be opaque, but around the rain it needs to be transparent. So we'll need to erase it to pink before we let it rain. So let's do that. Let's go. We still have the secondary color pink. Let's go erase to pink. You can do that, or you can right click and say clear all frames. You see all frames will be erased to pink. And then apply a filter which is going to be the snow filter. Well, we don't have rain. We want to do rain, so we'll just change the parameters a little bit. Go to the timeline and scroll down to the bottom where you'll see the animated collection, and there is snowfall. And so with snowfall, you can see a little preview here. Let's make them bigger so we can see more of them and change the size. There you go. You can see the snow, and you can also turn it darker. For rain, that might look better. Also, you can change the speed, which way the wind is blowing, if you have a side draft, and also the velocity of the snow. So it's coming down more in streaks in this case, right? So you can have it also with a little bit of gale wind drafting it to the side. And then as you perhaps reduce the size to something a little bit more rain-ish, you can probably make it look like some short streaks. Let's go and render that or apply that and see what we've got. Okay, so we've got some little streaks of rain here. We can do a few more and continue this. Let's see, we can render again, apply for more rain. It just gets heavier. Maybe we can also do some smaller rain, a little bit less velocity, all sorts of variants. Do a little whiplash. You can keyframe which way the wind is blowing and change that over time. And then one thing that we also see sometimes have a mix of colors. Something we also see is instead of snow or rain falling down, let me go and store this one here quick. Instead of rain going down or snow going down, one thing that you might want to do is an underwater scene and see bubbles rising from the ocean floor. So I'll show you how to do that. I'll erase, right click here to erase to the secondary color, so the entire, at least this current frame is, or if I clear all frames, it will clear all frames there. And so normally, as you scrub through that, you would see the rain coming down. What I'm going to do is then just flip the image upside down afterwards, right? Now, if you don't have an image already in there on top of which you want to render the rain right away, you just do that after the rain has been, or the snow has been rendered, right? So let's say we do snow, snowfall, let's see, size, and we'll do just a few, actually just a few of those, but pretty big ones, high turbulence, and pretty bright, something like this. So normally when you apply that, you'll see it come down as snow, something like that. And if you now reverse the sequence or flip it upside down, right? I mean, there's a couple of ways to do it. You can reverse it in time, and that's simply right-clicking here and reverse frames. So now the sequence goes in the opposite direction. But it's still not always what you want. Maybe you still want the same sequence of that original animation behind it. So let me go reverse it again and go back to that original sequence, and instead actually flip it upside down. Right? You can do image flip vertical for the current image or for all of them. And so now we have it also go upside down. And so that's some of the techniques you can use. And once you have stored this, let's go right here. We have a couple to choose from. We have the rain, we have the snow or the bubbles, upside down snow. And whichever we want to apply to the existing animation, I'm going to use this one now here. So this is the one we combined earlier. And that one has two animations. They're no longer layered, but they were successfully combined. One of them with the transparency through Magic Pink, and that was the one with that galaxy twirl here with the twirl effect. And the other one was the original that we see here still. That was the original Mandelbrot. So we have this one that we want to use as the background, and we'll just make this the animated swap. And then let's say we want rain on top of that. And so we have this one with the Magic Pink, and maybe the rain is, not streaky enough. You see these little blocks here. If we zoom in, you can see them really well. Maybe we want to have a little bit of a ghosting effect, so it fades towards the upper part. You could do that in a couple of ways. You could go, even here at the regular filters level, it doesn't necessarily have to be animated here. You could go and add some blurring in the direction, like the motion blur. Right, or a zoom blur if you put the zoom hotspot really way up there. But the motion blur might be useful, and you just say in which direction to blur it and by how much. And that may give you a little bit of streaks. Just make sure it's about the same direction as the direction in which they move. And then you could go kind of like this and animate it so that it applies that over the entire sequence of frames. Now without keyframing, but that might be good enough if you want a bit more of this type of effect. Let's take another look. If you wanted to do the ghosting actually under the timeline, you have similar filters. In the animated section there's a ghost option. By default it will ghost 4. Let's go a little bit higher, 7 or 8 levels, and that one actually renders from the back to the first frame, from the last to the first. So it does kind of look weird because it seems like the raindrops are now moving up. That's because it renders the last one first and gradually builds itself to the front. But now you do see a little bit of a ghosting effect on these moving particles, except for the very first one or two. So that could be another technique, and maybe you want to have a bit more contrast. Expand the dynamic range is a good one here, because then whatever the dark parts are going to be as dark as they can. Sometimes you need more, so go to filter, adjust maybe the value or the curves. You could go a little bit darker here, so you see the rain even more. Right? Animate this. Apply it across the entire sequence once more. And so let's say this is the rainfall we want to combine on top of this one. This one is currently still selected as the animated swap, and so as you scrub, it grabs the images from the animated swap, and you can preview them here, right? And so you can see that it's doing this, but it's doing this in combine mode. That's multiply probably. So right click here to see the layer mode as Magic Pink. And now you see a bit more, the background is still what it is, and you see the raindrops not multiplied, but just appearing in a more opaque fashion on top of it. Now they're moving really fast, so it's going to be very subtle. But you can use that to preview. You could actually do that combination right here. You could simply go to merge with swap, or you could say, well, I have this one here in the swap. I have this one currently loaded here. Let's go and combine the two. Let's see, there's probably some other ways here. Combine with swap. This one does not have the Magic Pink as far as I know, but there is perhaps another one, and so like this one here that we just saw here earlier. If we have the Magic Pink as the combine mode, then we can also go here and simply say merge with swap. So it grabs the images from this one here that has the swap image sequence, and this one here is combining these two. And so we have now the rainfall. Let's say we wanted to actually undo that. You know, you can easily, as long as you have these stored copies here, you can easily say, okay, let's go back to this one. Or actually, no, let's keep this one in the animated swap, but let's go back to this one now. Let's go bubbles rising from the ocean floor instead, right? So something like this, and combine them together. Again, not in multiply mode or any of these others, but magic pink mode. And there's plenty of other modes to try for various different effects. But here you see the original color on the background, and you see the white snow flipped upside down to make it look a bit like displacement, bubbles rising from the ocean floor. And so that's another one that you can combine, merge with swap, all across the frame sequence. And that actually brings up also another thing that you have when you see bubbles that are transparent. You want them to also be refractive. You want to simulate a refraction or a displacement effect, displacing the light that goes through them. And so there are some techniques you can use to simulate that refractive distortion. Again, you would, for instance, use this one here as the animated swap now. All right. Let's first store what we currently have, because that's another milestone reached. Let's go to store to disk. So here's our current animation. We can click it to restore it. And then we could say, well, okay, this was great. We actually used this one here for the animated snowfall, or flipped upside down, meaning the rising bubbles. Now we're going to designate this as the animated swap image to apply another filter there, which is the displacement, right? Displaced by swap. So whatever this current animation is, we want to have some sort of a displacement happening through these white bubbles. And so you can experiment with that. For instance, here you see displaced by swap. There are several options to play with. Let's try the default one first and see if that one gives us any grief. Yeah, it does shift the whole image sideways a little bit, but when you look at the bubbles, you do get an interesting effect there too. So this might be worth a shot. Let's go give it just a little bit and click anim. And so now here we have created something that moves really hectic in the background, because that's what it did to begin with. Very erratic, but it also does a little bit of displacement. You see how these bubbles seem to be distorting the entire image that is applied on. Let's do that again. Let's go restore this one without the deformation, and still keep this one as your current swap image, but this time we'll go with a different version of the displacement. So we have displaced by swap. I like the pool displays. Pool seems like water is related, and there is indeed something to that, and color twirl displays is pretty interesting too. But ultimately you just got to try them all and see if for some images it will have a better place than for others. Let's try this one here. This one is also pretty much real time, so as you scrub the slider, it's gonna go pretty quickly and show you some effect that it can do. Let's go click anim to animate that, and there you go. It's going really fast. This is an example that's perhaps much shorter than what you probably will be dealing with in the real world, but it gives you an idea of some of the capabilities. Let's restore this one and try one more. Still on this one with the animation for the rising bubbles. And this time we'll go something like displaced by swap with the color twirl displays. This one is not so fast. It's not interactive. As you scrub the slider here, it's going to wait for you to release it before it calculates it. And then there's some amount of twirl you can apply. So sometimes that will be just fine, and sometimes you just find that that's not the one you're looking for. Let's go apply that. You can see here, this one takes quite a bit more time to calculate. But it's all about the same thing. You can use an image sequence that you have stored away here in a DWA, and once you have that, you can use that to displace another one, the one that you currently have loaded. In fact, you can do that even on itself, right? You can have. Let's finish with this as an example. So we're done with all this. This is good. Let's go get rid of all that. What I'm going to do is show rising bubbles over something else. So I'm going to go. Actually, not rising bubbles. I'm going to go show something else displacing itself. All right, so let's go with render plasma noise, something like that, and I'm going to go just make that the animation, something like that, and then that animation will be displacing itself. So we need to have a little bit of an animation of some sort on that. I'm going to go with a zoom this time, or a I know a wave display. There's all sorts of different things we could do. Let's go with the transform. Where's my transform group? There it is. Let's do the transform from the beginning. Keyframe that, go to the end, and scale it and rotate it a little bit and scale it some more. There you go. Keyframe that and apply. All right, so we have a little bit of a zoom action here, and what I'm going to do is simply store that now. Store to disk like we did so many times so far, and this time I'm going to displace by itself. I'm going to select this as the animated swap, and as I'm scrubbing through that, if you enable the blend mode, you can see that it's multiplying to itself, which is why what's white remains white, but what's dark gets even darker. And you know, you could do that in other ways. You could do you know, vivid light, linear burn, all sorts of different effects here around gray, tracing paper. So that is going to look different depending on the blending mode. And some of them, like the tracing paper, is actually not going to show any different because you have two images and you kind of get the average of the two. It's still the same. But you can also apply displacement, and I'm going to go this time with one more way to do the displacement, and that's under the timeline editor. There's also a couple of displace by swap. There's also combine with swap, where you can do the mixing of the buffer from one to the other level. Not really impressive in this case, since we go from one image to the other that's identical. But you do have some other effects here too. And then you have the displace by swap, only a few of them here, but the pool is there. So you could change the amount of the intensity of that displacement, right? You could start with nothing at all and go to the first frame. And let's say you want to do a looping animation, the last one will have the same amount, and then you will simply go here somewhere in the middle and increase that displacement like that and apply that. So now you have a varying amount of displacement. This is, by the way, a great technique to create marble textures or to create things that are, you know, some really weird patterns. So that's what I wanted to show you. That's just some of the techniques. Combining things in different ways in the right order will get you there. And you may not necessarily miss those layers, animated layers at multiple levels, if you think about how to combine those things. And hopefully this will work for you to discover a new workflow as well. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon with some more examples. Thank you.